Hi guys, and welcome along to this new video I'm doing. This one is part of stuff I've done in my past. A lot of the stuff was before COVID and around COVID, and I put it onto one of our local vintage websites. And back then I wasn't doing video, so everything was done with pictures, but I documented everything I was doing and how I was doing it. So what I would like to do is give you the insight into this stuff as well, as I think it will help you and fill in some of the gaps. This one that I'm taking you on the journey today of is rust removal. Now, I've got a lot of stuff in the past from people who have had it stored in garages and sheds and buildings, and when you open them, the metal shrouds are rusting and stuff like that. So this is one of the things I researched and went on about how to derust. And this is my journey. So grab yourself a drink, something to snack on, and we'll get on with it, shall we?
Stand by for action.
Hi, welcome back. I've decided to pass on my knowledge in what I have learnt in rust removal. This is to help, and I hope to stop the rusting in vintage 8-bit PCs I have been restoring over time. For all the rust removal, the items we will need is a plastic bin or tub of some type. You can use a storage bin like from a warehouse or a fish bin that you can get from hardware stores. Just make sure there is no holes in the bin or bins. They need to be watertight, okay? Also, they need to be able to hold the part you want to derust. And have at least 50 millimeters all around the part for clearance, as you will see why soon, and I will explain that. One of the pictures shown in the photos is of an old refrigerator vegetable bin. I used this for small parts when I was starting out to test this theory out and see how it went. The next thing is to get at least 2 metal, and I'm talking steel, rods or bars, or more, but not stainless or galvanized, as they will cause a toxic gas, and it is not very good for you, pets, or your children. So do not use stainless steel or galvanized. Next, you'll need to get them as clean as possible from rust, paint, grease, etc. So you need to get them fairly clean. Not sparkling clean, but they need to be fairly clean. It will make it work better and the process would work faster. I used some old metal tent pegs I had. Now these are out of an old canvas tent I had, a large one, which had big metal pegs for it. The other thing is to make sure that they will sit above the water level when you put them in your derusting bath or tank. Otherwise, the electrolysis process, which is what we're using, will eat the copper from the wire on the power leads, and you will not get a very good contact, and it will not work very well. With mine, I laid the pieces of steel on an angle, as they were long enough, and that meant I could bend them up on a 90-degree or so angle and have the round rings out of the fluid so I could attach my wires to those. The next thing you will need is a power supply unit of some type. and really any DC power unit will do. I mean, I have seen on the internet people have used phone chargers to do this, although only on small parts. As all of you know, I don't like to throw a lot of things away unless it is really of no use. So I had to scrounge around and I found I had a 12 volt 5 amp DC power brick. What this was from, I do not know, but it was good enough for what I need. I tested it and it seems to work fine. As well as that, of course, you'll need some hookup wire, and because I was using 12 volts, I had a bit of 12 volt wiring floating around that I could use, and you do need a bit. If you don't have any 12 volt wiring, you can use household mains wiring. It's just a bit stiffer and it may not have as many fine strands in it as the 12 volt wiring does, but it should work fine. So, we're almost ready to start, and the only other stuff we need is water. Yes, tap water. And the magic ingredient, which is washing crystals, or borax if you can get it. Borax is a better item to use, but it is harder to get in some places. And you can get it from your hardware stores if they stock it, and in New Zealand that's places like Bunnings and Mitre 10. But I got washing crystals from our local supermarket, which happened to be Pak'nSave, when I was doing the shopping. And this is what I used through the process. You can use either. Now the fun part starts. It's time to get your hands dirty. The fish bin I used was an old one I had for a while, sitting outside. So it was pretty grungy and needed a good clean. So with some warm water and dishwashing liquid, I got to about cleaning out all the dirt and rubbish out of the bin. After that, just give it a good rinse with clean water. You don't need to dry it, just make sure that most of the soap and everything is out of it and it is clean. Next is to find a place where you want to do this. The problem being is you need it out of the way of anybody who may bang it, knock it, kids, animals and the like, so somewhere where it's not going to be in the way. So now there are some rules to do with electrolysis, as electrolysis will give off hydrogen gas. So it needs to be in a well ventilated area, as with hydrogen gas, in concentration you know what's going to happen. If there is a spark, there's going to be a really loud noise and maybe a wee bit of destruction. Just be mindful of that. Where I did mine, I did it outside on our back deck, as we don't have any children and only have a cat. And the cat wasn't very interested in it anyway. I had a bin that was a little bit bigger that could slip over the top of mine. So what I did is I had some extra tent pegs that I put across the four corners of my main bin, which held the other one up slightly so that the gas could escape out through the top and down the sides. I suppose if you wanted to, you could get a bin, I should say, that has a lid, and you could drill a couple of little vent holes and put some piping that runs across and down so that the gas can run out and then dissipate away. There's a couple of options there for you. Now, why do we need the extra room in the bin to go around our part? The reason for this is that it allows the process to work better, and it allows you to get the rods around the part so that then the positive attraction in the bars will allow the rust to be pulled to them a lot easier, and they're not having to try and work their way all the way to one end or the other to get to a bar. So it helps with the de-rusting of your part. So as you will see in my tub or tubs, I have put in 3 or 4 rods or bars. But for a wider part, you can go down to 2 or maybe even 1, but I wouldn't recommend 1. 2 or more up to a point is better. Also, you don't have to do the part all at once. You can do it a piece at a time if you can't get the whole thing into the tub, because you can put it in and de-rust part of it. When that's done, you can rotate your part around and then carry on with the next part. But please power it off before you do anything to either touch the part, touch the rods, or rotate it in the solution, as anything with the positive and negative touching each other, or you touching one part and another, you can cause a dead short, and that's not good for you. It's not good for the power supply. So don't do that. So when making the de-rusting solution, I have found it easier to use warm water to dissolve the crystals than cold. You can still use cold water, that works fine. It just takes a little bit longer and a lot more mixing to dissolve, because you need the crystals dissolved. Also, you don't need to fill the tub to the top. If your part sits halfway up the tub, the side that is, or 2/3 of the way up the tub, you don't need to fill the tub right to the top. You only need to have the liquid about 20 millimeters or 2 centimeters or an inch above the part or parts you want to do. And if the tub is too small, you can do it in piece by piece rather than trying to squeeze it all in and do it as one. So you can do that in stages. And I mean, it's a little more time, a little more effort, but it does the same thing. This is as I have said before. Just remember, you have to power the unit off before you rotate the part in the tub. Okay, so what is the magic potion, you keep asking me? Well, it's very simple in fact. The mixture I use is 1 tablespoon, yes, 1 tablespoon, of the crystals or borax to every 4 litres of water. Also, one thing I remember about this mixture is that this stuff never goes off. So remember that. This is a cleaning fluid. It's not like something that'll have an expiry date. So you can reuse it again and again and again. This is not an exact mix, but it works quite well. You can experiment with a little more. I wouldn't go any less. That is to you. But you may find the results are not going to get you very far. Try with what I've done, and if you find it's not that good, try a wee bit more and see how you go. All you have to do from time to time is siphon off the clear liquid. Now I let this sit for a day or two so that the sediment all goes to the bottom of the tub, and I use a tube, a clear tube, and a container big enough to hold at least the amount of water I have in the tub, or bigger, and I siphon it out, and as soon as it gets down to where it just starts to draw the sediment, I stop it, and I put the rest of that down the wastewater drain, not the fresh water and stormwater drains. They go to the rivers. You want to put it down where all your wastewater, grey water goes. So that's for like your sink and your bathroom and places like that. It goes down those drains. It's just so that if there's any toxins in the water, it's not going to get into the rivers and cause issues. One thing I have learnt is that if I put the part on a type of standoff to keep it from the bottom of the tub, it worked a lot better. Now for this, I used some of the old plastic tomato cage clamps. These were the ones that go on the 3 poles around the tomato to stop them getting blown over. These were plastic and non-conductive, but anything non-conductive would work fine. Wood would be fine, just nothing that will conduct electricity. You could even use the tops of plastic bottles or bits of round glass, or just anything that's not conductive of electricity, but I find plastic is the most readily available to use. Okay, so how to make the unit? We put the amount of rods or bars we want to use into our tub. I put mine in the corners, and I think that is a good place to start. You need to clamp them in place. You don't have to, but I find it fixes a lot of problems that may happen later on. Now you can do this with non-conductive plastic clamps, or you could, if you're not filling the tub all the way up, drill some small pilot holes near the top and put cable ties around them, so you go from outside the tub, inside, around your bar, back out, and cable tie it up. Or you could use wire or string just to tie them in. It's just to stop them moving around. You don't want to get a short in the tub. So after you've done that, then we'll get our wire. Mine is 12 volts, so 12 volts is fine for what I'm using. Most people would only be using 12 volts or a little higher. So if you're going higher, you can use a bit of household electrical wiring. Now, how we do this is we strip some of the wire off one end of a piece of cable. So when we do that, then we wrap it around our first post. From our first post, we then take our wire and we have to run it on the outside of the tub. We don't want the wire hanging inside the tub. It has to be on the outside of the tub, just to stop any potential problems. We take that to our next post in line, which then we take the wire and we cut it long enough so that we can strip the end and wind that around the second post. Then we strip the piece of wire that we cut off and wrap that around the second post as well. Then we go from the second post to the third, and we continue this around so it makes one long chain to the last post. So when we've finished all that and we're all done, this has made up our positive electrodes, and this is what our metal rods are going to be. So these will be the rods that actually attract the rust to them. So with the first rod, which is all the last rod, which may be closest to where you're going to have your power supply, you need another piece of wire, strip the end, wrap it around that post, and then that wire goes to the positive on your power pack or your power brick. Please make sure it is not plugged in and turned on. I know it sounds silly, but it does happen. Right, now that we've done that, we take another length of wire, and this one needs to be a fairly long wire, and this is going to be the one that's going to go from the negative connection on our power pack, and the other end of this you can put on a little crocodile clip if you like, but I just usually use bare wire, and this is the contact that's going to go to the part we're going to have in our tub. Now this, what I do is I look for either a venting hole or a screw hole or a small piece of metal that I can wrap the wire around. The other thing you can do is, at times I have found it helps to run more than one of those cables to the part. So if it's quite a large part, you could run 2 or 3 of the negatives to the part itself in different areas, and this just helps with the derusting of the unit. Okay, so now from here, if you have it all wired up, please recheck all the wires and connections of your wiring. Then if you're happy with it and it all looks good, put your plastic stands in the bottom of the tub. Next, put your part into the tub and position it so that it has the 50mm or so clearance around it. It doesn't have to be precise, it's just a good gapping. If you only have 20mm gap around it, that's fine also. It's just to make sure nothing is going to short. Next, once we have that done, we put the solution into the tub. Just gently pour it in. When you're pouring it in, remember it only needs to be up to 20mm above the part. If your part starts to move or rise in the liquid when you're filling it, what you can use is something like a glass saucer, a jar, or something like that, a cup, to hold it down. Just be aware you may have to move this around, as it could be covering areas that are trying to be derusted. But this is only on the rare examples. Right, so the next thing is to power on the unit. So plug it in and turn it on. Now the magic happens. It may take a few seconds before you see the little bubbles starting to come off of the part in your tub. And this is where, if you have a clear container, now you can buy the cheap clear containers from the hardware and they work just fine. What you will notice is that it'll start going really fast in the beginning, and as over time, as it gets rid of the rust, it'll slow down the bubbling. And so there you have it. You've just made some magic. So now it's about time and how long it's going to take, and that depends on the power supply and the size of the part and how rusty it is. So it may take a wee while to do it. And to answer all your questions, the answer is no. Your part will not dissolve into nothing. All this is doing is causing an oxide with the rust to come off of your part. It is not going to eat the metal. It is not acidic. So it's not like an acid that's actually going to eat through the metal, or an alkali that's going to eat through the metal. This is just dissolving the rust as an oxide and transferring it onto the metal post or rods. And as I say, you'll know when the process has finished, as that you will notice there'll be a lot less bubbles and that they may have stopped completely. You may notice tiny bubbles on your piece of metal, but they will not be rising off it and floating to the surface, which is what the hydrogen is. When it's finished, then turn the unit off, remove your part, and if you have more parts to do, set them up and put them in, turn it on, and off you go again. I have left my parts in my tub overnight and then checked on them in the morning to see that the process has finished. When you remove the part from the tub, you will see that it may look a greyish black with that substance on them. It may also turn a yellowish colour after being out of the tub for a minute or two. But don't worry, this is nothing to get worried about. It is just a protective coating which forms on the part from the process. Now, if you can, take it inside. You'll need to give it a good clean. If not, find a spot away from the tub and the unit and give it a wash. To clean it, use some warm water with a nylon scouring pad, and I also used a nylon dish brush. Don't put them back in the kitchen by the sink. Keep them for what you're using them for. It's not good to mix them up. For the hard spots and stuff and the mounting holes and that, I found the dish brush was really good for cleaning it up. Next, then I would pad it dry with an old cloth, an old towel, or kitchen towels if you haven't got a cloth, because it is going to get stained, and what you can do is after a while give it a wash in the washing machine and reuse it so you can have your own cloth for doing this sort of stuff. Once I'd done that, to make sure it was perfectly dry and there was no moisture hanging around to start the process over again, I put it in the oven at 100 degrees, and I left it in there for around about 5 to 7 minutes, depending on the size of the part or the amount of parts I had in there. It's just to make sure there is no moisture left on or in crevices in the part. So, there you have it. Wasn't that fun? Also, it's a cool project if you have kids. So, just supervise them. I'm not responsible for what they may do, or your pets, or even yourself. That is up to you and is your responsibility. I take no responsibility for anything you may do or cause. So here are some pictures. This is what I started with, and this is what I had a day or less later. Just a note is that if you notice your rods are getting really crusty with crystals and formations on them and that, this means that the unit is working well and it will fill up with scum at the bottom. If your rods are getting rusty looking, turn the unit off and dismantle it. Take your rods out and give them a good clean with a stiff brush. If it's still not clean, take to it with a sanding disc on a sander or a grinder or a wire wheel of some sort to clean it up. You want to try and get it as clean as possible. It does not need to be shiny, but the cleaner, the better it works. There you have it, and hopefully you will have some fun with this and the kids will get a science lesson out of it. It is a fairly non-dangerous thing to do. As I said, you just got to be careful you don't short anything. The worst thing you can do, you could probably kill the power pack or blow a fuse in the house. Just be safe and have fun. Until next time, guys. Ciao.